I chose an engineering apprenticeship because I believed it would be something different from normal education. The work I do, I very much feel like it makes a difference because, well, gas analysis is quite important really, because it's not just in like a safe area. Some of the analyzers measure things that are toxic, which when you make something and you know it's like as foolproof as possible, you kind of do feel the feeling that, you know, you've probably saved a life, which if you're not feeling, you know, like your work is worth it when you're saving a life, really, what's the point of working to it? I work with a lot of different tools. For instance, because I'm working with both mechanical and electrical components and software, I have SolidWorks for the mechanical side of things, but then I use a software called Altium, which lets you design schematics and the PCBs that can be used within products. Well, it's always nice seeing something I've worked on, even if it's, you know, a prototype that's failed. I usually keep them on my desk because I feel like there are lessons to be learned. When it's in a product and it's working, obviously the immense feeling of pride is very strong. I kind of think, you know, I made that. But even then, if it's something that I've built and for some reason it hasn't worked, maybe I was too tight on the tolerancing, or maybe it just wasn't the right dimensions, I kind of just keep it there, because I feel like even if you've failed and it's not in the product, it's still, in a way, a success. There are many technical skills I've developed. For instance, my communication has improved quite a bit. My understanding of electronic circuits drastically improved. I don't think I can really explain how it's improved. There are some components where you kind of, in like a secondary or even a A-level level, you might know relatively well, but I feel like the understanding I have on the variables of a component, for even something as like simple as a resistor or a capacitor, it really helps you kind of stop and think, how would this affect the overall circuit and how would it affect it? But also other skills I've improved on, like programming. I used to program a little bit in Python, but now I'm learning a bit on the side of C, so Arduino, all that kind of stuff. It's I've very much improved and developed within about a year and a half. Right now, I am working to EMST level 3, which is about the equivalent of, I think, 4 A levels, about that. After that, if someone from my company sits down with me and says, hey, do you want to do a level 4? I plan, I will continue learning. Pretty much, the goal of learning I have is up to wherever I'm allowed to, really. So even if it goes up to PhD, whatever, I'm happy continuing to learn. Nice to earn while learning. For instance, I'm avoiding huge educational debt. Because I still live with my parents, I get to invest some of the money I earn into like hobbies, which can be quite nice, you know, because after a hard day of work, you kind of need something to kind of get a bit of rest and relaxation, which I feel like is very nice. Earning a salary, it's helped with my independence to an extent. I've been constantly told I'm a relatively independent person. So to that regard of just general day-to-day activities, I don't really know if it's affected my independence. But when it comes to going to areas, it's helped a lot, because I've started to learn to drive, which means that kind of means that I could hopefully buy a car. When you think about it, there are real stakes to the things you do, right? Like if it wasn't a real job, I wouldn't really have to worry about getting things wrong, would I? Because it wouldn't, end of the day, maybe it wouldn't really matter the things I do, but because it is in fact real work, like the tasks I'm given are for real products that have real consequences if I get it wrong. I feel like that in itself makes everything feel like an actual real job and not just a training course with a work aspect to it. If somebody said engineering is too hard, I'd still say give it a try, because even if you don't know something, a friend of mine once said that being an engineer isn't about knowing everything, it's about knowing how to get the information and how to actually kind of develop the answer to the problem you've got. So even if you think it's too hard, I'd say give it a shot. With the support I've been given in the workplace with training, there's been a lot more than I actually thought there would be, because obviously compared to everyone at work, I'm very much kind of behind the curve, I guess. I'm not as experienced as the average engineer. But it's quite nice knowing that if I do need help, there's somebody in my corner that I can just kind of run back towards and be like, I need help, or have I got this right? How can I improve upon my work? It's very nice. And then when it comes to the actual training side of things, Daryl, my training officer, yeah, he's very helpful. He kind of points out, hey, you've made this mistake, or this is good work, but you can improve by doing X, Y, and Z. Of which then, between those two review meetings I have with him, I will improve upon my work, I will research, I will do anything in my power to try and be as best of a engineer, or I guess technically a technician, as best as I can be. Anyone who's unsure if they really want to get into a career of engineering, I would say, just try it, really. There's almost nothing to lose, really. Like, if you start a career in engineering and you think, I don't like this, there's other principles to follow. Like, you don't have to be, a mechanic for a car. I'm obviously not. I'm not dressed for that, and I'm probably not built for that anyway. But yeah, you can literally just try it. If you don't like it, there's other principles to try, or you could just try something different altogether, really. Before starting, I feel like maths and science were very much important, especially for the training side of things, where going to college, you need to learn why you learn. There's like a unit based on maths, there's a unit based on physics. So those subjects are very much important. But then I also feel like English, surprisingly, is also a pretty key one. That gave me a little bit of a shock, if I'm being honest, because I kind of thought it'd be mostly design based, but no, there is things like a change note or like a code amendment where you actually do need to talk about how this will affect it. And obviously, if you don't really know how to word it correctly, it gets a bit awkward very quickly. Well, there's numerous factors that kind of add upon it. For instance, the media I consumed, like movies, games, they always kind of represented engineers as almost like a force of change, almost. And then there was also the fact that when I was in secondary school working for my GCSEs, there was a engineering course which I took, and I quite enjoyed that. So it's a combination of those two factors, really. It kind of depends on what you'd see as a real engineering product, because there have been some, well, I work with optimization, so in general, most of my tasks are related to the real products. For instance, I've been working on an analyzer, but it's not that important, as it's just a screw, making sure that the drawings are updated for it. But when I started real engineering work, so within a proper team, not moving about, because I used to rotate around the departments, that was about a year into the working here. There are many things that could be deemed the coolest thing I've worked on, for different reasons, really. For instance, relatively close to when I was starting, I was given kind of a taster project for design, where I basically worked on a electromagnetic transducer testing jig, which was pretty interesting because it taught me how to actually design using SolidWorks, how to use a 3D printer. It was all really interesting. But I'd say, because I like kind of creating an actual change, the most interesting and probably cool to a result, like so as a consequence, project I've worked on was for work experience last year, where I designed a jig for them to basically use to measure light flowing through a bunch of filters. And that was really interesting because at the beginning of the week, you kind of think that it won't really impact them, but at the end of it, when they basically present what they've learned the entire week, you kind of realize that maybe have actually changed somebody's thoughts and feelings about the subject of STEM as a whole, really. Well, a typical day for me, I get up, go to work at about 7:30ish, make sure all my equipment is running correctly. I check my task manager so that I can kind of refresh, and then I continue on with the tasks that I have I continue on with the tasks I started the previous day. To sum up my apprenticeship so far, I would say it's challenging, but I definitely think it's worth it. I don't regret anything that I've done within the course. Yeah,